Hello everybody. As you can see, I'm not in my typical location right now for where I usually do my reviews. I'm doing something a little different in this video. I'm currently working on a review for The Street Fighter starring Sonny Chiba. And I'm doing that video sort of as a tribute to Sonny Chiba because he passed away recently, and I wanted to do a little tribute to him because he's starring in one of my favorite martial arts movies of all time. But I had some time today, and I went to the theater to go check out the new Candyman movie. First time I've been able to go to a theater in a long time, but so I enjoyed the movie, and I thought I would, instead of doing my usual review, I thought I would sit down and give my thoughts on the movie in a more casual way. As you can see, I'm sitting in my location where I usually do my horror talk videos. So this is going to be sort of a little more rambly review, more off the cuff. And so let's get on with it. So, like I said, I literally just saw the movie. I just got back a little bit ago after watching the movie. If you hear the fan on in the background, I apologize for that. It's just really fucking hot, and I needed to cool down. But anyway, so I was looking forward to seeing the new Candyman because I am a big fan of the original Candyman. I did a review on it a while back. You can go check that out if you want to. But I love the first Candyman movie. Candyman is one of my all-time favorite horror villains. I like him more than the big three. I like Candyman more than Freddy Krueger, Michael Myers, and Jason Voorhees. For me, Candyman is one of the scariest horror movie villains. I put Candyman and John Ryder from The Hitcher in the same place. Like, if I were to do a list of my favorite horror villains, Candyman and John Ryder would be in the same spot, because there is a similarity between the two of them. That's why I have The Hitcher back here. What scares me the most about Candyman and John Ryder is that, unlike most horror movie villains, Candyman doesn't just kill you. If he has his sights set on you, he turns the whole world against you. He turns everyone against you, basically makes your life into a living nightmare until you eventually want to die, and then he kills you. That's the same way John Ryder is. That's why I put these two characters together as some of the scariest horror villains. Quick thoughts on the first movie. Like I said, I love the original Candyman. I love Helen Lyle. She is one of the best characters in horror. Tony Todd as Candyman is fantastic. That booming voice effect. Couple thoughts on the sequels. Candyman 2, Farewell to the Flesh. I don't hate that movie. I know a lot of people don't like Candyman, Farewell to the Flesh. I understand why. It's not a great movie, especially when you compare it to the first Candyman. But I have fun with it. I mean, we get to see Tony Todd as Candyman go around kill people again. But the main reason why Candyman Farewell to the Flesh isn't as good as the original Candyman is because Candyman 2, or Candyman Farewell to the Flesh, is a little more of a straightforward slasher movie. And as much as I love a good slasher movie, the original Candyman is not a slasher movie. It drives me crazy whenever I hear somebody say, oh, Candyman is a slasher movie. It's not. Candyman is Gothic horror. If you look at Gothic horror and you look at Candyman, it takes all the elements of Gothic horror and puts it in this new setting. This new modern setting. And the other thing that I really love about Candyman is how it takes place in a city. It takes place in Chicago. And my favorite setting for horror movies is cities, because it shows that even though you're in civilization, you're not safe. Because you have the horror movies that take place off the beaten path, but I like the horror movies that take place in civilization. Because civilization can be just as dangerous as whatever happens off the beaten path. And Candyman 3, I barely remember. So anyway, yeah, quick thoughts on the original Candyman. I absolutely love that movie. It's one of my all-time favorite horror movies. So I was intrigued by this new Candyman. So I was looking forward to seeing the new Candyman, but I was cautiously optimistic. That's how I always handle modern horror movies nowadays, because we have the internet, which is the ultimate hype machine. When something comes out that is good, people hype it up beyond all belief, and then when people who haven't had a chance to see it before the hype finally get to see it, they can feel let down by it. That's happened to me before. That's why I don't really watch reviews for modern movies until I get to see them. Maybe 1 or 2 videos, but it's not much. But yeah, every time there's a modern movie, I keep my expectations in check, and I was doing that with this. I'm keeping it in mind, this new Candyman is not going to be the old Candyman. It's not. It's never going to live up to the original Candyman. We can always hope that a sequel to a horror movie can live up to the original movie, but that is rarely going to be the case. It's not very likely that a sequel to Candyman is going to live up to the original Candyman. That's why it's Candyman. That's why it's earned the reputation over the years as a great movie. So I knew it wasn't going to live up to the standards of the old Candyman. And from what little I've seen of the trailers, because I don't watch a lot of trailers, because trailers nowadays tend to give away too much of the movie, so my motto is, the way I watch trailers is I only watch like the first minute at the most. And if a trailer doesn't have me intrigued after the first minute, then I'm probably not going to be interested in the movie until I can rent it. But anyway, so from what I had seen in the trailers, I was intrigued, because it looked like they were going to do something different from the original Candyman. And then there was that lingering question, is this going to be a sequel, or is it going to be a sequel that's essentially a reboot of the series, because we've had quite a few of those. And I was pleasantly surprised to find out that it was indeed a sequel to the first Candyman. The main thing I like about this new Candyman is that it is telling a different story. It's not just telling the first Candyman again. It has the elements of the first Candyman, but it's doing it in a different way. You've probably guessed this from the trailer, but the way they handle Candyman in this movie is that you can only see him in the reflection. And I like that. It's a different twist on the Candyman lore. This is a minor spoiler, but that changes at a point in the movie. I'm not going to tell you when. But for the most part, Candyman is in reflections, and when he kills people, that's where he's doing it, essentially, is in the reflections. This movie is a sequel to the first Candyman, and I really enjoyed how they connected the old Candyman to this newer Candyman movie. There are a few surprises here and there that, as the movie went on, were kind of predictable. I mean, there was one element that I did predict at a certain point. I remember I had to get up and use the bathroom, and as I'm in the bathroom, I'm thinking, I wonder if this is where it's going. And sure enough, that's where it was going. I saw it with a friend of mine, and I even said to her, I bet you this is what's happening. And she said, yeah, I think that's how it's going too. We hadn't said it to each other, but we both knew where it was going. But despite the fact that I knew where it was going, I liked where it was going, because it showed it as a true sequel to the original Candyman. So that part I liked. And I also liked how they handled Helen Lyle in the movie. Because she's not in this movie, but she's talked about in this movie. There's this way they handle flashbacks, which I really love. They do this kind of shadow puppet things when they're talking about stuff from the old film. They're not just showing clips from the old film or refilming the actors from the old film doing stuff, or getting new actors to play actors from the old film. There is one part where they do get a new actor to play someone from the old film, but it didn't bother me that much. But I loved how in this movie, whenever they were talking about a story or talking about something that happened in the past, they did it with these shadow puppets. And those parts were awesome. And I actually thought they were the most chilling part of the movie. They were my favorite part of the movie. The shadow puppet scenes, I think, were the best part of the movie. Which brings me to a minor complaint, is that, like I said, the shadow puppet moments were great, but in a Candyman movie, you want the Candyman moments to be your favorite part. It's just how it is. In a horror movie, you want the horror scenes to stand out. And these do stand out. They do. They are great scenes. But they're just, for me, they were overshadowed. Pun not intended, but they were overshadowed by the shadow puppets. Son of a bitch. Anyway. Unintentional pun, but I'm proud of it. Anyway. So, I mean, the scenes where Candyman is doing what he does and killing people are great. They are fantastic death scenes. Very well done. And there's also, something that I like is, there's this small element of body horror. It's a very small bit. It's a very small piece of body horror that's in the film, but I thought that was well done, and that was another interesting spin on the Candyman lore. The setting is still fantastic. Everything is beautifully shot. I like the characters, and the main thing I like about the characters is they are flawed characters. They let these characters be flawed. They let them be, not perfect. I heard complaints about how this movie is not subtle with its social commentary. And that is true. It's not subtle with its social commentary. The original Candyman was very subtle in how it did things. Not just with its social commentary, but also in these other areas which made it so creepy. This one lacks a lot of subtlety. Still well done, still very good, but it lacks that subtlety from the original Candyman. But yeah, I do miss the subtlety from the original Candyman, and I also miss that this did not feel like a Gothic horror movie. The original Candyman, like I said, is Gothic horror. And that's one of the things that set it apart from so many horror movies that were coming out at the time. We had just gotten through the slasher boom, and this was something different. This was like, okay, we aren't really going to be a slasher movie. We're going to be, like I said, we're going to be a Gothic horror movie. And this movie doesn't feel like a Gothic horror movie. It doesn't quite feel like a slasher movie, but it does have a few elements of a slasher movie. And that's what really hit me about this, was it lost that feel of Gothic horror. Not enough so that I don't like the movie. Like I said, I had a very good time. But I just wish they kept that element of Gothic horror. I just wish the filmmakers clearly saw the original Candyman, and the people who made this film clearly love the original Candyman. And that's what you want when you're a fan of something. If someone's making a sequel or a remake, you want them to be a fan of the original. And that's what I saw here. The filmmakers clearly loved the original movie, and they wanted to make a sequel to the original movie, but make it different. They didn't want to just tell the same story again, which is what I respect the most about this new Candyman. It is a sequel that is doing something different, and it's acknowledging what happened in the original movie, and it is connected to the original movie, but it's doing things in a different way. I respect that the most. It's a little heartbreaking that they lost that element of Gothic horror which I think was what really stepped up the original so much. Candyman is... he doesn't feel like a slasher villain. He feels like a classic horror villain. He feels like a Gothic horror villain. And as much as I did like how they handled Candyman in here, it lost that element of that. He felt... it kind of captured Candyman, but it didn't fully capture Candyman until the end of the movie, and what happens in the last act. I am not going to spoil it for you, but the last act is, for me, when it truly captured Candyman, and I wanted more of that. And I'm hoping that there is a sequel to this. I am hoping they continue on with this story, because I think that would be fantastic. For me, this was an interesting way to revive Candyman for a modern era, and I'm hoping we get more Candyman stories from this. I'm hoping this movie is successful, so we can get more Candyman movies again. Not too much. For me, this movie captured nostalgia perfectly. Now, I was a fan of the 2018 Halloween, and there was a lot of fan service in there. There is mild fan service in this new one, very mild, but they handle it well. Because it's not just like a, oh, hey, remember this thing? No, it's naturally woven into the story. Whatever is in here that captures the nostalgia from the original Candyman, it's part of the story. Especially with how they handle Helen Lyle's story. Because it truly does capture that element of how whenever a story is told, it's changed, and it becomes so different from what might have actually happened, that in a different era, it's, you know, like, this is how this person heard this story, and then they tell this person, and a story changes from what originally happened, and that's how a legend can really be born. And again, they capture that perfectly in these shadow puppet moments. The shadow puppet moments really did steal the whole show, honestly, and it does kind of break my heart that these scenes of shadow puppetry are in my head more than the Candyman stuff. The Candyman stuff, well, I did think was very well done, but the shadow puppetry was just so great, and for me, the shadow puppet stuff was more haunting than the Candyman stuff. That's both a compliment and a detriment to the film. But again, that's not to say that the Candyman stuff is not good. It's still very good. It just the shadow puppet moments I thought were great. The movie overall, I would say, is definitely a good movie. I don't regret watching it. If you're a fan of the original Candyman, it is worth watching. There are just a few little things here and there that I think could have taken this to another level. Maybe not at the same level as Candyman, but very close. It is a worthy sequel to the original Candyman, and I do hope they continue with this to an extent. Not get carried away, but I'm okay with them continuing this story to an extent. The main thing I'm hoping is that this sequel will get people to watch the original movie. I'm hoping so, because the original movie is so fantastic. So, no Grindhouse rankings here, because this is just an on-the-fly review for a movie I just saw. If I were to give this a rating, I mean, I don't feel right about giving it a rating, because, again, I just saw the movie, and I like a movie to sit with me for a few days before I give it a rating. But I will say, at this point in time, I do think the new Candyman is a solid 4.1 out of 5. It's worth watching. It's a good movie. There are a lot of good elements. There are some bad elements that take it down, but not enough to the point where I am going to say it's a bad movie. It's worth your time, especially if you're a fan of the original Candyman. And I want people to watch it because I would not mind seeing a couple more Candyman movies. Not a full-blown series like 8 or 9 movies, but maybe 1 or 2 more movies, and then stop. It's never going to happen. If this character becomes popular, they're never going to let this character die. We're still going to get Michael Myers movies. I'm sure we're going to get another Nightmare on Elm Street movies. We'll probably get another Friday the 13th movie once all the legal bullshit is taken care of. But these characters are never going to die. But I am not going to object to another Candyman movie after this one. If they do make another Candyman movie, I'm just hoping that they capture that element of Gothic horror that was in the original. Tell a different story, but capture the Gothic horror. So yeah, anyway, on that note, if you saw the new Candyman, leave comments down below of what you thought of it. Let me know what you think of the original Candyman. Let me know if you like this little on-the-fly review where I just randomly talk about a movie that I just saw. We're going to get to another more polished review very soon. Stay tuned for the Street Fighter review. Again, the Sonny Chiba Street Fighter, not the video game. But until then, I hope you're all having a good day, and this is the Maniac here to remind you that the Grindhouse will never die.